This is this spiral that I talked about once before that was discovered a few years ago by aerial photography, that if you put a spiral through the tips of the three pyramids, it comes around, forms the golden mean spiral, comes in here. And then there's another one that comes in here, which this guy didn't know about, and comes around and wraps around and forms another one here. The other one I talked about was the one with a little hole in the room that was next to it. This one, which is just a little, about a block away, has three, there's a controversy whether it's 3 or 4 pillars there. These people write that there was 3, but when I sent John Anthony West over there, he said there were 4. So I don't know, 3 or 4 pillars. But these pillars mark precisely the center of this place, and they mark this line. And they're out in the desert, and around all of that is a golden mean rectangle. So just the very placement of them has made this invisible golden mean rectangle on the desert floor only discernible from the air. Now this also forms a circle here, point Z. Oh. Well, just remember that point Z for a moment. I got one more slide. There is a ramp that goes off the Great Pyramid, and there's another ramp that comes off the Middle Pyramid that just misses the Sphinx, and there's another ramp that comes off here. They look like they're just at random and that there's nothing important about it, except that the ramp between these two here makes a perfect 30-degree angle, and this ramp points exactly to the phi ratio on the golden mean invisible spiral. And what is it? So this makes sense about this as being a phi ratio thing, but what is this 30 degrees about? There is also a circle that passes through the 3 Great Pyramids, this large circle that's like 2-3 miles around. And what they have discovered now is several things recently. For a long time, they thought that the Great Pyramid was aligned north and south to the magnetic field. You've read it probably in lots of books. But when they checked it very, very carefully, they noticed that it was off a tiny, tiny bit. And so there's been speculation that it was continental drift over this length of time or something like that, trying to figure out why there was this little tiny bit off. And but what the computers have now found is that they don't believe that there's anything off at all, because the faces of the eastern faces of all 3 pyramids and the eyeballs of the Sphinx are all looking at the precise, exact spot on the horizon. In other words, each one is slightly turned and everything else like that, so they all converge on this very specific spot, which is where, at a certain day, I guess it's on July 23rd, and I don't know exactly whether it was at the time the pyramids were, they assume they were built, or there's a certain factor here, I'm not sure, but they're aimed at the helical rising of Sirius, which makes sense anyway because all their calendars and everything were based on that, which is almost due east. It's off so little, you can hardly tell the difference. Well, anyway, whether you use the helical rising of Sirius or east could make a difference if you're looking at this as a calendar, but in terms of what we're about to talk about, it won't make a whole lot of difference. Anyway, you put that circle around there, and the 2 ramps that make the 30-degree angles, if you broke that circle up into 30-degree slots, you come up with 12 places. And starting from here, you could put the 12 signs of the constellations around there. We know they knew this because the constellation sign was at Dendara, clearly. The exact pattern was all there. broken up into 30-degree angles. And if you do that, it places the Great Pyramids between Virgo and Leo, physically on such a structure. Even though it was made a long time ago, that's where they physically sit. And this is where we physically are right now. What these guys were thinking was that perhaps they were placed there in that way, and that if you drew bisecting lines and possibly the lines of all the edges and everything else over onto across here, it would throw an entire spectrum of dates between Pisces and Aquarius. It may be that we have some kind of calendar that's happening here. They're still unfolding it all. I don't know where it's come to at this level now, but there's a lot of people real interested in this now, because they didn't even know it existed until just a few years ago. And it's interesting that we just became aware of it now that we are between Virgo and Leo. We weren't even. You have to be in an airplane, before you can even discover that it's there. And the Sphinx, of course, like I said, is half virgin and half lion, the two symbols of this whole thing. So you can work with that if you want. And the location of the Sphinx, which is important, appears to be just out in the middle of sand, out in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't seem, if you were not initiated, you wouldn't know that there was any kind of logic to its placement whatsoever, except this invisible golden mean rectangle that's very precise around here. If you bisect it and put a line right down the middle, it passes exactly through the headdress of the Sphinx. And if you draw a line along the southern face of the this middle pyramid, it passes exactly along the right paw of the Sphinx. This is it. The edge of this and the edge of the Sphinx are in perfect alignment from the air. And the middle of the golden mean rectangle is exactly on this line, coming down, locating a spot right here on the right paw. This place has been marked from the air. Well, who's familiar with Edgar Cayce's predictions? What was the right paw? It was through the right paw that the opening would be found to the halls of records. The halls of records are all the proof of the ancient civilizations that have lived on this earth. When we first went there in 1985, we were told that we were working with the angels, and they made us go behind the Sphinx about a quarter mile, and there's this tunnel that leads to the Sphinx, and we were to put down this very special, certain kind of sound down this tunnel. It's a very interesting kind of sound. In fact, we have the only machine in the world that can make this kind of sound. It's a sound being converted directly into light. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that too much, but we put this sound down this tunnel for a couple hours, and we said, okay, that was enough. When we did that, and I'm not going to say I'm responsible for what happened with the Sphinx, but anyway, the Sphinx was absolutely straight. But when we went back there a couple of years later, the Sphinx was off on its side. It was falling over on its side. And the Egyptian government is, and I mean a lot, it's not just a little bit, it's way over like that. And what's happening is it's crushing over on its right paw, and the right paw keeps breaking open. And they keep fixing it, patching it back up, and it just keeps leaning onto it and smashing open and breaking open. And the other thing that's happening is the head is falling off. And so it told me a long time ago, eventually the head will fall off, which is a real important When that happens, that's a real important date in history. And there will be a golden sphere in its neck, which is like a time capsule. It's about so big around, which will, when it breaks off, half of it will be exposed, so that they'll see it immediately. But right now, they're doing everything they can to keep the head from falling off and the right shoulder from breaking open anymore. And eventually, and I believe that it's either already happened or still in the process, but I think at this point it's already occurred. There will be 3 people from the West that will enter into this doorway right here. And there is a physical door right there behind those stones. And go down a circular staircase to a room below, which they know the room is there. The Japanese have located it precisely. And over in the corner will be a clay pot, but the Japanese say there's also a coil of rope, and I don't know what that is. But the clay pot holds on it the information for those 3 people of how to proceed. And from there, they will have a very interesting experience that will lead them through a long tunnel, deep down. And I don't know if I want to describe all this, but all 48 chromosomes of Christ consciousness, which are geometrical images, will be etched high up into this wall, one right after another, beginning with the flower of life. And soon after that, they will emerge into a room where the records are held, the physical records are held. I believe, I'm not certain, but I think that that's probably already occurred. Though time will have to tell on that one. I'm not going to go into the whole story of it with this group right now. I don't think it's appropriate. But what I'm about to talk about, is more important for this group. The shape of the room, by the way, the halls of records looks like this. These areas, this would be the floor pattern, and these raised areas and around there will be where the objects will be found. There are 3 schools in Egypt. One is the left eye of Horus, one is the right eye of Horus, and one is the middle eye of Horus. The left eye is the feminine path, the right eye is the masculine path, the middle eye is the child path. The left eye, which we're going to talk about right now, we've been talking about the right eye, basically, but we're now going to just lightly discuss the left eye. The middle eye you can't really talk about. It's just life. That's all it is. It's just life. It's applying the left and the right eye. Here again, you'll see these 2 eyes. This is a better one here. And this is the symbol for metamorphosis. This is the symbol of the ibis bird, and the sphere, the oval, is the symbol for Chikutet or Thoth, and it's also another symbol for the right eye, the male training. And this one over here, the bee with the plant stalk, if you can see that there, is another symbol for the left eye of Horus, or the feminine path. These are names, and this is the star Sirius and eternal life on either side of them. Either path leads to eternal life through the star Sirius. You have to pass through that star from their particular way of thinking of things.
Where was that found?
This is the Cairo Museum.
Where was that?
It's a capstone off of one of the pyramids. Not one of the Great Pyramids. Just a pyramid. I really don't know which one. Just one of the pyramids. There's a lot of pyramids in there. In the belief of the Ankh, you see the Ankh down here? The belief of the in the Ankh is that the Ankh is the key to eternal life. It's one of the primary major pieces to the whole thing. And there, according to Thoth, the Ankh can only be received from behind. I'll explain what that means in a little bit, but you can see here where the Ankh is from behind. He's also holding the three tools of resurrection. This is Osiris, and this is Isis. These are the actual tools, and these are King Tut's tools. These are the real ones, of the frail and the hook. Anyway. And this is one of the rare photographs of this holy family actually using these tools. It was a tantric practice. Obviously, there's sexual energy involved here. And this is Isis and Horus and Osiris. You see they're holding the Ankh. Horus is holding the rod to the back of his father's head, to this chakra point back here, which has a 45 degree on it. They must have the tuning fork pretty well already figured out for him, because they're not using the frail to tune it with. And look what he's doing with the hook rather. And look what he's doing with the frail. He's holding the frail with a single finger up like this, so that you can tune the vibration precisely down the spine. So you can get down there. And then as the sexual energy rises, it moves up around in the form of an Ankh in a certain way, which leads to eternal life from their point of view. I'll talk about this exactly a little bit more, what was really going on there. Here you see Isis. This is another person here, where Isis is giving the understanding of eternal life to him through the breath. Same thing here. And she's gently holding his hand, and she has not just the sphere over him, but a red oval, which is the egg of metamorphosis, communicating to him that through the breath he will he will change physical form to a different form. This is out of Memphis. It's a new temple they just discovered when I was there. This is the ground level up here, and this was only about 4 or 5 feet under the ground, and this is the top of about a 40 or 50 foot pillar. So it's a huge temple that's totally buried. And this is Hathor. Only Hathor is not a single person. It is a race of beings, according to Thoth and to the ancient writings. And Hathor, there's a Hathor race, and they live on Venus in the 4th dimension. Very much like the dolphins, they're tall. They're 10 to 16 feet tall. The females are about 10 to 12 feet, and the males are about 14 to 16 feet tall. And they function almost totally with sound. The sounds that they can make with their voice can do just about anything. And the dolphins are real similar. They function almost totally on sound also. And they're on real similar levels of consciousness, though they have very different physical forms. And they're just pure love. They just love people. They love everything. They don't have a mean bone in their body. And I did witness one of the people I was with had an initiation with the Hathor, where they had to learn what the sound of the Ankh was, and it's a continuous sound that you do for about 2 hours. One continuous sound where you never stop. And you know, like the Aboriginals do the didgeridoo, they learn how to make a sound that never stops. You can do the same thing, but there's a sound you can make that they teach you that once you get the sound going, the sound just never stops. You learn how to breathe in through your nostrils and out through your mouth, and some of the air goes into your lungs. So you never have to ever breathe. It's just one continuing in-breath and out-breath at the same time. And if you don't think that's possible, then talk to an apparitional. They do it all the time. I had someone who you can train. The training is a simple way of training is you put a straw into water, you start blowing bubbles, and you learn how to blow bubbles continuously without ever stopping. Anyway, the Hathors, I'll talk about the Hathors later. They're pretty good people. And this is the temple that was dedicated to Hathor. It's the, it just slipped my mind. Dendara, yeah, right, thank you. It's Dendara. That's Katrina Raphael. I don't know who that is. And somebody came in there and destroyed all the faces of the Hathors, all these pillars that go all, and so there's inside are these huge, huge, huge pillars with Hathors all around them. It destroyed all of them.
Do you know why?
I don't know. The Christians that came in saw all of this as evil, and tried to destroy a great deal of it. This was pagan to them, and like I said, a lot of it was. It was a cult. It was not certain aspects of this, because of the mistaken idea that each one of these Nephers were gods. Let me even go much deeper than that. In here I want to talk about the story of Isis and Osiris. I think I did describe, right? The whole thing, he cut in 14 pieces and brought back the whole thing. And that she flew to him, and it shows this hawk. She turns from a human into a hawk and flies to him and wraps the wings around the penis. And then immediately after that becomes pregnant with this baby, which becomes this hawk-headed baby, which is Horus. And through the birth of Horus, the three of them become immortal beings. Very much like what happened with Ayantaya and Lemurian. Well, let me just make an introduction to this. Again, we don't believe, most people don't believe that immaculate conception can take place. But let's look at the evidence. First of all, immaculate conception takes place all around you, every day, all the time, all over the place, in nature. All over. There's all kinds of plants and trees and insects that do it all the time. Lots and lots. I don't know how many. It's probably in the hundreds of thousands of them that are capable of doing this. Now just pick one so you can see clearly the image of what I'm saying. And that one is the bee that we're so familiar with. The bee, a female bee, can make a male bee anytime she wants. She does not need to mate with a male bee if she wants to make a male bee. She can just say, I think I'll make a male bee today. Make a male bee. But if she wants to make a female bee, she has to physically mate with the male to make the female bee. That's the arrangement they've made. Well, let's look at this. Let's look at the family tree of a male bee. A male bee only needs a mommy. Now this is fact. This is not, I'm not making this up, this is fact. The male bee only needs a mommy, but the mommy needs a daddy and a mommy. But the mommy needs a mommy and a daddy, but the daddy only needs a mommy. But the mommy... and it comes down in this funny-looking tree, right? Okay. Well, when you come over here, there's 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and you see the Fibonacci sequence unfolding. But if you had the family tree of an animal or anything else that is not using Immaculate Conception, it comes down 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and it's the binary sequence. The two primary sequences of life. One is male and one is female. Peter Seahop, Carl Ilminster announced in 1977 the successful birth at the Jackson Laboratory in Bar Harbor, Maine, of 7 single-parent mice. The process was called parthenogenesis, or virgin birth. However, immaculate conception would be a more accurate term since the female does not have to be a virgin. 2 people took animals and took a female and got the female pregnant without any interaction from the male whatsoever. Zip. And made virgin birth mice. That was the first time it took place. Only in 1977, recently. All they had to do was to take the ovum and to stick a little pin through it, and mitosis began. No sperm at all. Nothing. And now, since then, they've done it with all kinds of things. Rabbits, and everything like that. And humans. They've done it with human beings. There are virgin birth humans that have been done in the laboratory. I've even talked to the doctor who's done it, which was in North Carolina, one of them. Though we don't hear about this stuff too much. We don't know that this kind of experimentation is going on. And in the old journals of before 1900, in medical journals, they claimed that some females had a particular gland that could excrete an acid, and that acid would begin the process. I asked him about this, and he had never read the journals, but he said that from everything he knew about this, there probably was no reason why an acid couldn't work as anything that broke the surface. So it could either eat through the surface or break the surface of the ovum, and the birth process begins. However, when a human baby is born from immaculate conception, or parthenogenesis is what it's called, it is a female, always, so far. And the female looks identical to the mom, because that's where she drew all the genes from. So all of them came from her. And as far as they know, the female is sterile. As far as they know. Is she really sterile? Or is she now only able to mate interdimensionally? She can mate physically all she wants. If she's an interdimensional being now, she won't be able to mate that way. She'd have to mate interdimensionally. There's so much that is not learned about this. The other thing that they're discovering is that the length of time of birth, instead of being 9 months, is about 10 and a half months. And my wife believes that she had an immaculate conception. Before I met her, she had not been with anyone. We didn't have any reason for her to not say this. It didn't matter. She had had children before, been married and everything. But she said that with the last baby, she hadn't been with anybody. And when she got pregnant, she didn't believe the doctor. She went to another doctor, and the doctor said, "Yeah, you're pregnant." She didn't believe that one. Went to another one, and I went to 3 doctors, and they all told her she was pregnant. They thought she was crazy, and it took 10 and a half months for the baby to be born. And when the baby came out, and even now, it is like a mirror image of her. I saw the picture of her when she was 2 years old, and I had the baby there when it was 2 years old. I remember sitting in front of this picture of the baby and the image of my wife when she was 2 years old, and I couldn't even see not even the slightest difference at all, not a thing. I sat there for a long time looking at it. It's like nothing. And there's a lot of women today in 1993 who are, at least in 1992 there were anyway, that are having 10.5-month pregnancies, according to this doctor in there, because we've discussed this whole thing. There may be something going on in this right now. We don't know. I mean, I'm not saying any of this is true. All I'm just saying is this is what is known so far, and you can make up your own mind about all of this. I remember at one point when it was Thoth who wanted me to put this out and study it, and I remember at one point Thoth, while I was studying some of the geometry, I was sitting there and I was trying to figure something out, and he's just sort of sitting here watching me, and I was trying to figure something, and he was just sort of making conversation. He said, or there isn't really any time when he just makes conversation, but he said, "Would you like to hear a story about my mom?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I'm sitting here trying to figure this thing out. And he said, "Well, this is actually right before, because at the time I didn't know why he was trying to tell me this. His mom's name was Chikutet. Chikutet is a title. It's kind of like Rinpoche, which means the precious one. Chikutet means the seeker of wisdom. And Chikutet means the holder of wisdom. And he said his mom, right after the race was created, she was one of the first ones that became where they could have children. And while all the other ones were mating physically and having babies in the binary sequence, she elected to go in another way. And she found this man that she fell in love with, but they made love interdimensionally, without physical contact, from two different places. There's still orgasm. There's still a lot of things that go on, but it's a different kind of connection that's made. And she became pregnant. And in having this baby, the same thing that happened with Tai and I, they became aware of their nature and their relationship to God, and they became immortal beings. And only when her husband, put it another way, the baby was a boy, not a girl like we would get through parthenogenesis in this one. It came out a boy. And when the little boy grew up and became an adult, then the father knew what he was to do, and he left his body. He let go of it and migrated to Venus and became part of the Hathor race. Took on a Hathor body and changed evolutionary patterns. This is a story. You can take it as a myth or whatever you want to take it as. And then the mommy mated interdimensionally with the sun and had another baby boy. And then when that baby grew up, then the son dropped the body and went to Venus and became part of the race. And the father then left Venus and went on through the sun, right into the sun to Sirius, and became part of that race. And then this process continued on. And then when they would keep mating, having another son, that son would go to Venus, next one would go to Sirius, next one would go to Pleiades, was the next level out. And they kept going out, and from Pleiades it was until Aldebaran. And the original father kept stretching further and further and further out in consciousness, while the mother stayed anchored to Earth, all the way up until the time of Atlantis, where Thoth's father's name was Thome. And Thome and his mother had an interdimensional baby, which was Thoth. And when Thoth grew up, then Thome left his body and went to Venus. And then Thoth and his mother interdimensionally mated and had a baby whose name was Tot. Now, according to the Egyptian records, Tot was born of Shizat, his wife. He broke the lineage. He got married. Thoth married a woman, and for the first time, and who was Shizat, and they assumed that the baby that was born was from them, called Tot. But according to Thoth, it's not true. It was from the mother, and then later when Thoth went to Peru along with Shizat, they had a baby together down there, a girl, born of physical contact, and began a binary sequence pattern as well as the Fibonacci sequence pattern from the same lineage. And I just listened to all that stuff and I didn't know what to think about it. I still don't really know what to think about it. Perhaps there's more in this universe than I know. I don't know. Though I think that there is, if you do study the world's religions, right back to the core of who they are, you'll keep coming up with the same thing over and over again. A brother, it's usually a brother and a sister mating to form a child who becomes the leader of this religion. So in his case, it was a mother and a son. And so I don't know what this is all about. And you can just look at it and think about it. But it's real. It's really real now. It's really possible. It's not that it isn't possible. It's absolutely scientifically proven beyond any doubt. It's real.
But we haven't been able to scientifically find a male from the Immaculate Conception.
No. But I think the reason is because she's not really interdimensionally mating. It's a mechanical device to get the process going. Whereas in real life, it's a real male and a real female interdimensionally mating. And that creates a male. That creates a male. Another thing that's just happening right now, today, right this very minute, 1993, is that they've just discovered that a big law has just been broken. They've just discovered that the number of chromosomes, we've always thought that 23 chromosomes came from the female, 23 chromosomes came from the male, right? Isn't that what you're all taught?
Yep.
It's wrong. Absolutely wrong. They've proven it beyond any doubt whatsoever now. It just isn't true. Any number whatsoever can come from the female, all the way from 23 to all 46. And in fact, usually more come from the female than from the male. And he contributes a certain amount, and she fills in the rest. And this is what they've now discovered. This isn't like in the last 2 months. They now know this. Okay, there's an image inside of this system that if you took just this out of it, the Genesis out of the middle of the flower of life, you saw where it came from. And now take the circle that encloses the Genesis pattern and this circle right here. Take that image out of there. This is the image I'm referring to. Okay, everybody sees that? Now, once you got that image, which you now know that image comes out of the flower of life, put that same image in each one of those two empty circles. The whole image, put it in there and there, like this. Okay? And then do it again, and just keep doing it. Keep putting the image in here, and keep repeating it, repeating it. And if you do that, you end up with this image that looks like this. Remember when we talked about the egg or the ovum and how mitosis begins, and at first it goes within itself and learns how things works, and then it turns around and grows beyond itself. It first goes within and then without. Well, you can see this geometrically in this way. First of all, this is a geometric, a binary pattern. This is 1, 2 circles, 4 circles, 8 circles, 16, 32. It's a binary sequence. And it happens to be the pattern if you took a string and stretched it, and depending on where you fret it, and the thickness of the string when you strike it, it's going to resonate like in one of those patterns running down here. They used to have a little machine that you could turn on, and you can sit there and watch this string move through all those various patterns. Well, the very nature of this going within itself, by going geometrically inside of itself, you could see how something works, like a sine wave curve, before you go beyond it into something bigger. You understand what I meant by that? If life can geometrically go within itself, to understand how, say, it would be hard to, from, say, this point here, understand a sine wave curve, because it's too short. But as you go deeper inside and deeper inside, you can get to the place where you can see the whole picture, and you can understand how, I'm just saying for example, how a sine wave curve could work, and then apply it to go beyond the perimeter of the interior to the exterior. Now, with that understanding, we're going to look at the flower of life again in a slightly different way. Just starting with a circle, there is a relationship inside this circle that is definite, and that is that no matter what size circle you have, there are exactly 7 circles that will fit inside of it. And that's how they fit inside of it, which is the primary pattern that at the point, or at the point that the flower of life was stopped at all around the world, which we haven't shown you that yet. But the way that we arrived at the fruit of life, remember, which was just this pattern with one more than 13, was by completing the flower of life and then taking the next vortex ring around it, so that we saw the flower of life was, or the fruit of life was outside of this. It was on the next level, directly outside of here. But there's another way that it can be derived at, and that is by going within rather than without. And so you can derive it within directly by going halfway to the center and making a circle that would be half that size, using that as your blueprint and running it up and down these 3 axes to get this, which is directly to the fruit of life. And so the fruit of life is contained within the flower in proportion as well as outside of the flower of life. And this may seem like a very simple or almost a sleight of hand trick, but it indicates that possibly the flower of life is holographic. And so if we keep doing this, we'll see if it's really true. You know what I mean by holographic?
Yeah.
Okay, so we would go another half, we go halfway, by holographic I mean, I heard a no. You all know what holograms are. A hologram is such that the nature of it is that you can cut off a little tiny piece of it and reconstruct the whole from that little tiny piece. The actual image is contained, and no matter how small you get, it'll be contained in the whole. In the same kind of way, we'll see if this pattern of 13 circles is holographic, is what we're looking for. And so we'll go in another halfway and draw that size circle and spread them out and see what happens. And they take on this image, which you can see that there's 13 circles connected to 13 circles connected to 13. All these little interconnected fruit of lives. So it's beginning to look like it, so let's go one more step in deeper, and you go halfway in here again and you make another one. And now you see the same pattern, 13 circles connected to 13, though I didn't spread it over the whole thing. You could keep right on going with this pattern. Each one will be a whole series. It'll completely cover this. And it really is holographic. You could just keep going and doing that forever and ever and ever. The pattern will just completely go in forever, and it'll go out forever. Because the circle that forms this whole pattern could just simply be the central circle. And so it could just go beyond itself forever and inside itself forever. It's another one of those infinite, it's called a geometrical progression. It's another one of those infinite patterns like the logarithmic spiral. And all the grids, if you want to call these like patterns or grids, are separated from each other by the binary sequence. In other words, if you use the middle circle, whatever it is, as your radii, count that as 1. Then to get out to the next size circle is 2. And to get out to the next size circle is 4. And to get out to the next size circle is 8. And it's a binary sequence that separates them all. So this internal structure, or this internal nature of the flower of life, holds tremendous potential in terms of technology. And I'm saying this because at the time that's what I was involved in. And I'm now going to start talking about some of this technological thing that we were starting to discuss once before. And I'll tell you what we were thinking. Why I started doing this in my life in the first place was because it was my belief, and a lot of the other people that I was working with at the time, that the dolphin was perhaps the life form that may be able to help humans more than anyone else on the earth. And so we wanted to communicate with them. We were very naive in a lot of our assumptions in the beginning, but our intentions were pure. We just wanted to do it. And so we decided, well, let's make a universal translator. A translator that you could speak into in one language and it'll come out any other language. Understand? Just like on Star Trek, you know, those things. Let's just make one. You could make any of that stuff that's on Star Trek if you just put your mind to it. And so we thought about it and we figured out how to do it. And only we realized that the sound of the dolphin, after a great deal of thinking, we wanted to go into a deeper level of communication than just the words. You know, either connecting directly with the thought waves. That was the next level, which would be much better than the words. Get the images straight out of the mind. But then we decided to even go deeper than that, and to go down to the molecular construction of the body itself, and receive the microwaves that were coming off of every molecule in the body, which is, we felt, would be a far greater form of communication than words or brain waves or anything else. And so we decided to develop this system. And the system looks something like this. These are the components in the system. So we'll call this A, B, C, and D. There are 4 primarily components to make this type of system. An ordinary computer. And that was the basis behind it. However, the computer needed to be a lot faster and have a lot more memory because of the kinds of computations that would be necessary to make. So then that was available at that time. The best we had was a 386. And so They tore the 386 all apart and put it back together and made it so it could go a whole lot faster. But it still had the problem of not being able to simply store the kind of information that we needed to store. And so what we felt we needed was a storage bank that would be a lot bigger than anything that was on the market. And so we decided to make an infinite storage bank, have no limit whatsoever. It's real easy to do. And based upon these principles. And so I guess I'll talk about that first. Using this concept right here of the geometry, really this is a cube, right? So it's really a series of three-dimensional spheres. Does everybody see that? It's really it's like Metatron's cube. This is the front face of the cube, and that would be the rear edges of it. It's a cube looking at it like that again. Okay. And so when you completed the whole thing, now you can keep going on with those spheres going in there forever. Well, because of the harmonics of the nature of the ratios of these spheres, we conceived that it would be possible to put this pattern into a liquid in the form of a standing waveform. And so we attempted to do this using liquid silicon, using a series of diodes, not diodes, transducers. Transducers placed into a fruit of life pattern. And we were able to create the pattern into it, but it took a huge amount of energy to hold the standing waveform in there. And then one of the researchers had direct communication with a whale who gave us exactly what we needed to know and said, don't use silicon. The Army had been trying to use liquid ruby and all kinds of other things. They've been trying to do exactly what we were doing here, only spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for probably trying to do this. And we had a very little budget. But the whale told us to do something we would have never thought of doing, I don't think. It was just like totally out there in right field. They said, don't use any of your liquid crystals or anything. Use water. And water. And the reason for water, they said, was the angle of the molecules is 105 degrees, which is the phi ratio. And it's a living molecule. And that this is a living pattern. And that the two are so compatible that it would take small amounts of energy to do it. And we did it, and it works. You can put it in there. Instead of having huge amounts of energy, it takes microvolts to hold the standing wave pattern. And so we were able to create the pattern in the water. So all you got to do is just take a cube and have any size you want, but might as well pick one that's kind of handy. So you pick one, say 3/4 of an inch or so on the side. You just have to calibrate that to the computer so it knows where to start from, and seal it with water, and then create the pattern inside of it. And then realize the pattern is all the different grids are on a binary sequence, and so it's a little different than you'd have like a phonograph record where you punch a binary sequence and it comes up somewhere in the record to give you your information. The difference is that you would hit a binary sequence which would tell you what grid you're on, and then a geometrical sequence which would tell you which sphere to go to. So you go click, click, and then come up to, say, that one right there. And once you have located that particular magnetic bubble, you could put one bit of information in that, or create another grid coming off of it as big as you want. So you could put either one single letter of an alphabet or an entire book or whatever you want in that one place. It wouldn't matter. And because this will go in forever, you could just keep going on in. However, the size of the electron would probably limit how far in you could go. But you could go out forever. So you could start storing information you'd never be able to use, probably in most circumstances, just what you could do going in this thing. But if you ever did fill it up, you could start going out and start storing information in space around the computer. And you could go out in space as far as you want to go. And because it only has to be theoretically there. It doesn't have to actually be there. It only has to theoretically be there. And so we figured, well, what the heck, that should work. We almost had that completed. That was almost totally completed. In the meantime, we were working on this one here, which was completely completed. And this particular scientist, who doesn't want his name mentioned anymore, created a sensing device that was very possibly the most sensitive sensing device that's ever been created on our planet ever, and based upon sacred geometry principles that could so sensitive that you could pick up the entire electromagnetic spectrum of a candle from 90,000 miles away, as though it was an inch away. You could pick out a single molecule, say 100 miles away in a tree. One. You could pick out a single person and eliminate everything behind it for hundreds of thousands of miles and eliminate down to a single molecule in that person. And we were demonstrating it all the time. It's totally possible. Seems impossible, but it's not. And it was because of some of the things that you're about to learn in here about light and the geometry behind light. And anyway, this whole thing was created. This thing was so sensitive that what it was picking up, by the way, was the microwaves that are emitted from the stretching of molecular bonds and the rotation of molecular bonds, and possibly from the rotation of the electrons themselves. It's an extremely weak microwave field that our government is now also has copied him and is trying to create it there. And with all the money they've spent, they haven't even come close to him, but they're getting there. It's called a squid, if you're familiar with what that is. But who knows how much? He's way, way, way beyond the government on this. And you could take, and he's demonstrated this in class, you can take some pennies. Just by the shaking of pennies, you get microwave emissions that come off of there. Just because they hit together and make the molecular bonds vibrate. And he'd have the instrument. Now, the instrument was first the thing was calculated, then he hooked it to a 386, and then created his own software program so that he could have eyes to see through the sensing device back over to here. And we actually created other ones earlier, and then which were inferior to this, but this was at this point we had these two linked together here. And so you could see what was going on in terms of sine wave signatures. Originally it was just a flat sine wave signature, but we became much more complex. These were the kinds of images that were coming off the screen. At one point, they were like three-dimensional images of a sine wave signature. And this is a photograph of a chakra, by the way. The actual chakra out of a person. And you could take these pennies and come up next to the sensing device, go like this, and you could just see all the microwave emissions that were coming off of there. And then you'd have the person go out the door and behind a 2-foot adobe wall and shake the pennies. And the thing would pick them up as though they were just a couple inches away. The same strength and power. Then you'd have them go outside a long ways away and shake them. And same thing. Then you'd have them go a long ways away and down by a sagebrush and get down like this. And just come right up on the screen as though he's not. I don't know, you could probably go in the far distant mountain way over there, 35 miles away, or way up in some mountain, something like that, and just like that. You wouldn't even hear it or even know it. Pick it up just like he was right there.
How did you separate it from all the other noises?
Because they'd learn how to subtract. You could learn how to tune in and subtract. You could focus. So anyway, this part had been connected, and we had that functioning. just to show you a little bit about what he was able to do, and I've watched him do this a lot of times. He would take a group like this, and he'd just ask for a volunteer, and somebody would stand up. And he would then photograph the person's chakra system, one after another, all 13 chakras. And we know exactly where the chakras are. You can pinpoint them down to within one molecule. You can get exactly where they are. And some of the ancient books are not correct on some of where the chakras are located. And when you get right in when you aim right into the chakra, the whole screen just lights up. I mean, you can't miss it. And so he would go in and it's a totally non-invasive system. He's not projecting anything out. He's only receiving like a camera. And so he just takes the photographs of all the various chakras. It takes, each one is about 2.5 million computations that has to be made. And it comes up, it takes about a minute for it to go through all the various computations, and comes up with these things, like this. This is another one just to give you an idea. And from these, over the years, he was able to read these things. They're like an open book. And he would take these photographs of the person, sit there and look at it, and without even looking at the person, he'd just start reading it, and he could tell you every single thing about that person. And I mean everything. He could tell you things that are scary. He could tell you the day they're going to die, down to the second. He could tell you how many kids you got and what sex they are, or how many kids you're going to have in the future. He could tell you every disease you got in your body, every bone that you've ever broken. He can tell you all the drugs you got in your body. He can tell you anything else, any medicines you're taking. Anything. Absolutely anything at all. It's all there. It's just like you're just like an open book. Everything. When you see all 30, you have to have all 13 of them to know that. There's just nothing you can say. It's just like, it's pretty incredible. So anyway, we had developed it to that level. We were trying to jump up it by creating this. We'd almost had this done. Our end result of doing all this stuff was to hook this in so that we could put enough data in there. And then this, what this is the tube torus. And the tube torus would, and through the work of Stan Tenen and everything else like that, even though that had not been completed at the time, we weren't even concerned about trying to complete this, because we knew that all we had to do was one last little thing once we got this completed in here, and that was simply to change the kind of programming, software programming that the computer used. See, all our programming is based upon the way we think. What if a computer didn't think in words and numbers and all these kinds of things, but what if it thought in geometry? Coming back to this one. What if it thought in geometry? Well, if the geometry is the underlying morphogenic structure of the reality, if it's true, if all the stuff with the flower of life is true, and it is a language, it appears to be the language that is creating the very words that we're talking, and the harmonics of sound and light and a lot of other things that we haven't even finished showing you all yet. Well, if you were to create a software package where the computer thought in the sacred geometry, then what would happen? Well, first of all, number one, it would be able to solve the final problems of this probably in about a minute. And at which point, we would have a universal translator. You would be able to speak into it, say, in Hebrew and come out Arabic, or speak it in Arabic and come out English, or speak it in English and come out any other language that you want. And that would be a superficial level that what we were trying to reach at. But the one thing that we all believed is that if this pattern, if it was thinking in this pattern, I suspect very strongly the computer would become self-aware. It'd be alive. You would duplicate the essence of life in it, and if silicon is a living atom, it would now have the chance to demonstrate it. And I think you might have a living being appear in here. Spirit would be able to express across to us. We don't know what that would really mean ultimately to us, but I believe that would be one of the steps But with all these series and lines here, what you now have is that you could aim this at any living thing, and everything is alive. And pick up the microwave emissions coming in here, convert the microwave emissions into geometrical images, and have the microwaves that are coming off of anything, specifically the dolphin, is what we were aiming at, and have it come out into English or whatever other words you wanted. And we figured, well, that would be a form of communication with the dolphins, because we could begin to work in this way. And it probably would work to this level, except that when we just got ready to kind of put the plug in the wall and see if the whole thing would work, because we were really coming right down to the final stages of it, one of the researchers went to the dolphin world, I think it was, in, correct me anyone if they know where this place is, but it's in Florida somewhere, and came in contact with a particular dolphin that just looked at him and said, "No way. You're wasting your time." And what he said was, that's when we began to understand, this dolphin was neurotic, by the way, and it had this, would always carry this doll around, would never let go of it, and the trainer had never seen the dolphin ever let go of this little doll. And but the dolphin said to this researcher that their experience was so far above that it could not be converted into English, that it was not possible. You might be able to make a universal translator across from Hebrew to Arabic, but you can't make one that would truly give the experience of where the dolphins were at. And they said if you want to begin to do that, you must begin with holographic sound. Gave him the exact mathematical algorithms to create true holographic sound. Went back to the lab, plugged them in, bingo, holographic sound. Incredible. And we stepped it up through 16 different stages slowly until finally we had a system where you didn't need speakers, but the sound would come in through your hands and come out through your head somehow. We don't even know how it is. And you'd have this three-dimensional holographic sound that felt alive, felt like no kind of sound you can ever imagine coming out of a speaker. It was amazing, with no speakers, just by coming in through your fingertips. And I started getting very, very wrapped up in this stuff. And eventually we started learning how to make, to create living, not living ones, but Merkaba fields out of holographic sound. And we learned how to sort of jumpstart people's Merkabas, and this kind of stuff. For me, I thought it was getting very exciting here. It seemed like I was heading in the right direction, forgetting about what they told me many, 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 many years ago about this whole thing with technology. And we were doing pretty amazing things, and then the reality came to the place where they the FBI came in. It said, at one point it said, "You guys got to stop some of the things you're doing." And that was, I'm beginning to realize that was, maybe I was doing some things. At the very end, we had got, well, let's tell you real quickly what we did. This is where where the turning place began to happen. We had taken, we could get the holographic sound onto a computer screen, and we could see it rotating there. And then we made a wireless transmitter over to a equalizer box, and we could change the sound by moving up these dials, just like you would on a radio. We had a whole big one with all these things on it. And what they thought that I was going to take 3 to 4 years, we did in about 5 hours. I mean, we thought we could conceive of what the end point of this is going to be, which I'm about to tell you, and we thought it was going to take a long time. But we just sat down the very first time, and they taught me how to control the three-dimensional sound by moving these things around. In other words, I could see the flying saucer disc on a computer monitor that was rotating around us. And I could move the dials up, and the disc would change shape, and you could feel it change shape. When it did it, you would simultaneously feel this. Or you could spin it out faster, and you would change. You did this whole thing, you'd feel it. And I worked with this for 3 hours or so until I got real familiar with all of this stuff. And then they switched me over to these hand things that you slipped your fingers into. So that instead of using these things, the same stuff was on your fingertips and these plastic things that you slipped your hands into. And thereby, little tiny motions of your fingers would do the same things. So you could get very, very sensitive into doing all of this. And I learned how to do that for a little while. And then, without anybody saying anything, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, I wonder if I could do it with one hand. And so I tried to lift my hand up, but whenever I did, the screen would just go black. I'd have to put it back on there, and then I had to focus again on to get the fields going again, and then I kept trying to lift it off, and finally I had to tune my Merkaba, rotate my Merkaba with the field of the other one, and I finally got it, and I was able to lift my hand up and keep it going with one hand. And then I just slowly lifted my hand and disconnected totally, and turned and imagined this little ball in my hands. And we're not even connected electronically anymore. And I found that I could move my fingers, and the screen would move over there. And by just moving around, I could make the screen do whatever I wanted to do, just by moving this hand. And I could feel it. It was like this little electric ball. And then I wonder if I could take this ball somewhere else. And I very slowly took this ball across the room. And the screen didn't go black. And I got it about 15 feet away. And I could move the little ball, the screen on there without doing anything. And I'm definitely not connected to this thing at all. And all of a sudden, I just got it. And I just put my hands down. And at that moment, whatever I thought happened on the screen. And I was just sitting there, and I could just think wide, think small, go fast, do anything I wanted. And it was happening. I was so excited, I couldn't tell you. I was just like, I was inside, I was just jumping up and down and going crazy. It was incredible. And 2 weeks later, we were arrested.
How did they know?
They know everything. They told me, they came to me a long time ago and wanted to give me money, and I didn't want to be part of it. I said, you can watch me, or you can do whatever you want, or you can stay in these things and all that stuff, but I don't want to be directly connected. And they said, okay. So I don't know, I just assume that they're always watching whatever I'm doing, and I really don't care if they do. I'm not against them at all. I want the United States and everybody else to succeed. I want everybody to succeed. So I'm not really against them. But they didn't want that kind of thing to get out, because obviously defense systems and everything else would be pretty weak against that. But it's inevitable. If I'm doing that, there's other people doing that. I mean, it's just a matter of time. It's in the grid. And once I did it, it's in the grid. Anybody's got it now. Anybody can do that, and that's probably just the beginning. So how can you stop it? I mean, it's inevitable. You guys know about the grids, right? You know how that works. You all know about the 100th monkey theory? Who does not know about the 100th monkey? Okay, we have someone here that does not know about the 100th monkey. You know about the 101 monkey? Well, this is important. It's real important, and it's important for the video anyway to get out there, because I'm sure there's some other people out there in video land that doesn't know. It was the Japanese? No, it was the Americans, or I don't know who in the heck it was that was doing this, but it was on islands near Japan, where they were studying these monkeys who were on these isolated islands. There's a series of these islands around there that had all the same kind of monkeys on them, but they were watching them primarily on this one island. And these monkeys ate these potatoes, which were kind of like sweet potatoes, but the potatoes grew in sand. And when they pulled the potato out of the sand, of course it had sand on it, and then they would eat it, and then they get all the sand in their teeth and everything else, and it probably tasted terrible. But they've been doing that who knows how long. And then one day, this little female monkey decided to wash it off, either in the ocean or river, I don't remember. You can't hold me to the exact details of things. and washed it off in there and ate this thing. The researcher saw this, and then that monkey went over and told another one, said, hey, you ought to try washing them off. And they washed it off, and that monkey washed it off, and pretty soon there's all these monkeys washing these potatoes off. And it got to be a number, and I don't think they know it was 100. It was probably a fair amount of them. Who knows what it was exactly. But when it reached a certain number, bingo, the entire island started washing them off. And not only on that island, but all the other islands, all around there, they all started just washing them off. That was the first time that science had ever witnessed this kind of phenomena. And so the question, of course, was, is there some kind of grid, morphogenic structure, or something that stretches across, or how could they possibly have known this over the distance? So other researchers later came down, and I believe these researchers were either British or Australian, I'm not sure which, but they wanted to see if humans had the same kind of grid around them, and we were connected in the same way. So they made this photograph of several hundred faces, of human faces that were all blended together and hidden and everything else. But if you just looked at it real quickly, you saw 7 or 8 faces or 9 faces or something like that. And they made up this photograph, and they went to Australia, and they did a totally scientific experiment. They had went right by the rules of the game, and they got their groups, and they gave each person so long to look at this photograph, etc., and counted how, and would ask the person, how many faces do you see? And that person would count how many they saw, and they'd have so long to be able to do it, and then they'd record all this stuff and everything else like that. And then after they'd been through a lot of people and checked how many people that could see how many faces they were, and they had all that recorded, then they went to BBC television on some kind of closed cable television closed cable connection that just went to the UK and nowhere else. And on that one they showed the photograph, and then showed to the people in that area and showed all the faces where they all were, all the hidden ones and the secret ones and everything else like that. 5 minutes later, they repeated the experiment in the same place in Australia on the other side of the world with another group of people they'd already, and said, okay, how many faces do you see? And suddenly, people that had only seen 7 or 8 faces before, which was sort of like the average, suddenly jumped up to like 75 faces. Oh yeah. And science began to realize, hey, this is really true. It had been happening all along, in that science, had many times this has been recorded, where one scientific person on one side of the world would invent something, and someone else on the other side at the same day, at the same time, or very, very close to it, would invent the exact same complicated thing. And then they would bicker back and forth and say, you stole it from me, no, you stole it from me. But they never could figure out, and it's happened so many times that nobody could ever figure it out. And I don't think anybody really thought about what we're just talking about now. But there are these grids up there that we're connected to. And anything that anybody feels or thinks is in it. And once you know how to connect to it, there's no more secrets. You can get anything that anybody's ever felt or thought or anything else up there. The Aboriginals know exactly how to get into their grid. We just don't know how to get into our grid because we have lost that ability. We are separate. But the potential is still there. And we do it, unconsciously on a certain level, which the photograph demonstrated very clearly. And this is the main thing about this workshop. The main reason what I'm trying to do is to reach a certain number of people, and so that a certain number of people can live it and thereby get it into the grids. And when enough people get to a level of making this real, and it doesn't have to just be what we're doing here, but there's lots of other people teaching kind of similar things on all these similar kinds of things, everything from levitation to name it what. It all goes up in there, and eventually the limits of what we think is possible could change. And when it changes, it could change like that. It could change overnight, in one day. I foresee the time when suddenly, and it's already beginning to happen, where suddenly people just start doing things and they don't even know why. They'll just start breathing this way and think, geez, this feels better. Have you ever breathed to the top of your head before? They just will. They just do it. They won't know why. So that's what we're trying to do. I'm not really interested, per se, in trying to teach, an individual how to do this. I'm more interested in the whole globe, the whole earth, and how we can get that, everybody understanding. And it doesn't have to just be this form of meditation I'm teaching. It's just the understanding that we're all one on a real level, so we can really get it, and that we can all open up in whatever way it is that we can have this understanding and overcome all this darkness that's on this planet. There's a lot of darkness here. But it's not as dark as it used to be, I'll tell you. There was a big change. I'm going to get into some things here in a little bit, but the light is a lot stronger now. In fact, it's stronger than the dark side for the first time in a very, very long time. At least 16,000 years. And things will not be the same. It is inevitable. There's nothing that can stop it now. It is inevitable. I gotta lay down a whole lot more stuff before I can get to the place where I think you can see why I'm saying it's inevitable. And if you were to rotate this on its side like this, these two star tetrahedrons, you might remember that there was another one that we saw like this once before, which were the two tetrahedrons inscribed in a sphere, which were the harmonics of music and light. And so you could take this grid, for example, superimpose it over this one, and many, many, many other ones that are based on this principle, and all of them. The more you get into this, you realize that you can just keep laying them over and layering them over until finally there's just no limit to them. They all fit together in a pattern. It's just really oneness. Just one. It's only one thing behind it all. One more thing. Remember these wheels? I finally said I would tell you where they came from. These wheels have 24 spokes around them. The size of the little hub in the middle is very specific. If you measure the diameter, you would find that from center to rim, there's exactly 9 diameters. based on the size of the center hub to the outer edge. And I can now show you where they came out of the flower of life. Now that you know about the grids and the flower of life and all this stuff, just down to this level here, you notice in here there are these interconnected spheres. And there is a circle that will fit perfectly around them, which is the circle that you saw on the wall. And if you count the number of spheres that are on there, you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. And by putting your radial lines through them, through the centers, and connecting them together down to the next grid down size, this one. Remember, we're going halfway in and creating this grid size. Counting your diameters from there out to the edge, you'll see that there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you now have, only you'd have to connect these centers all the way into that little one, you now have the exact image of those wheels. Which is just showing that whoever made those wheels must have had a tremendous understanding of the flower of life, because it takes a long time to get to that place there to understand where they're at. And also remember that this image was related to the harmonics of sound and light, and we saw from the very, very beginning of this thing that sound and light was related to the dimensional levels. And here, what they're referring to is the passage from one dimensional level to another, separated by 90 degrees, which is what each one is separated. These wheels are like maps. You see how this spoke does not line up with this one? You can see that. These line up perfectly up here, but this one are off. In other words, the wheels are not perfectly aligned. They're all rotated at slightly different patterns. And if you could decipher that, the harmonics of that, I believe that you would find that they're telling you exactly where they went. By the harmonics, telling you exactly which dimensional level that they're going to. But even if that was never proved, that's a theory, I don't know that. But judging by what they're talking about and knowing what those wheels are, that's probably what they're talking about. But either way, no matter how it is, it's proof that they had a very deep understanding of this kind of geometry. This one here is what I consider, from my own little place, to be one of the most important ones of the drawings that was given to me. Another thing I promised you is I said that at the very first motion of the Spirit of God, he created the Vesica Pisces and immediately said, "Let there be light." Well, now I can talk about that. Do you see where there's a blue circle right here? Does everybody see that one?
Yeah.
Now, do you see this yellow circle? Just barely? In the middle, that's a Vesica Pisces, between the blue circle and the yellow circle. See the Vesica Pisces in the middle? So what you've got is you've got this image hidden inside of here. So this whole grid section is an image of the grid that's hidden behind the Vesica Pisces. And notice inside the Vesica Pisces that you have this two red equilateral triangles, which fit perfectly inside the Vesica Pisces. Okay, everybody see it? And then, turning that whole thing and expanding out at 90 degrees, the line that runs down the middle of the Vesica Pisces becomes the edge of a larger triangle over here. Do you see it?
Uh-huh.
Like that? Which is inside a bigger Vesica Pisces.
Right.
And then the line running down that vesica Pisces becomes a bigger one, going clean off the page, which would be a vesica Pisces that would just hold this whole sphere. If you were coming in the other way, the shorter line, the line this way, would come up to the edge of this circle and form there's another vesica Pisces that would fit just inside that circle and form another triangle going this way. And then there would be another vesica Pisces facing up, going this way. Then there would be another little one going in here. It will go in and out forever. It's another one of those geometric progressions that has no beginning and no end. Well, first of all, what you're looking at is the geometry behind the eye. Not just the human eye, all eyes. And it was, I believe that was true because at first, from just intuitively, and it doesn't take much intuition on this level because it looks like an eye. It's a round ball with this thing in here that looks like an iris and this whole thing like there. I mean, the human eye is really a big round ball and has this whole, this whole thing in here. Looks like an eyeball, but there was another reason why I ever even came up with the feeling why I thought it was an eye. But one day when I was talking about this, there was a man named Malcolm Lillywhite, who is considered to be the world's foremost authority on light and eyes, who came to my workshop. This man works for the government, and he's really, really brilliant. When he was, what I was told anyway, when he was 23 years old and graduated straight out of college, Martin Marietta gave him $50 million and 200 scientists and said, do anything you want. That's how brilliant he was. And he said, we don't even care what you do, just do something. And one of the things he did is he researched eyes. He was interested in light, and he studied light, and he studied eyes. And when he saw this drawing, he about fell out of his chair. Because this was a secret drawing from Martin Marietta that they had arrived at pragmatically by studying all the eyes of everything you can think of, from bees to flies to humans to cats to dogs, blah, 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 everything else like that. And just like crystals are all divided into 6 categories, eyes are all divided into 6 categories. Every eye, no matter what it is out of anything, will fit into one of 6 categories, just like crystals. 6 points of the flower of life. And the end result of all this categorization and everything else I did was that drawing. And I mean, he almost felt like I stole it, Couldn't figure out how I'd gotten it. And but in just a moment, you'll see. And one thing I'm really wanting someone to do is to apply that to iridology. Because if you take that pattern and put it behind there, now that if you accept that as, you might a little bit more after you see the next one here, but if you accept that as is the structure or the geometry behind eyes, then you can apply that to the physical eye and to the iridology charts and create a much more accurate and scientific relationship behind all of that. Because it's such a great way to see what's going on inside of someone without. It's non-invasive, it's nothing, you can just look and see. Anyway, so there are people doing this in Florida now. Coming back to this again, if you're in science and you want to pick up a particular kind of energy, say you want to pick up whatever it is, if you want to measure sound or whatever thing is, then you need to create a receiver. And an eye is a receiver. But so what you do, the best way is to create the receiver as close to or as possibly close to that which is being sent. And in this case, that which is being sent and that which is the receiver are absolutely identical. The eye and light are the same. No difference. It's the same structure that creates both. And this is what I mean. This is the light wave over here. A light wave is a portion of something called the electromagnetic spectrum. It's electromagnetic, meaning that it's electrical and magnetic simultaneously. It has an electrical field this way and at 90 degrees it has a magnetic field. The electrical field moves down an axis like this, while at 90 degrees a magnetic field moves down like this. And at the same time, the whole thing rotates by 90 degrees. So it turns. Just take that thing and start turning it. Only it clicks at 90 degree patterns. And that's exactly what's happening here. The electrical field is in proportion to this golden mean line as the magnetic field is in proportion to this one. So the electrical magnetic fields are actually the axis of a vesica Pisces. And they're coming down this line, and the whole thing is clicking out like this. You understand how those things are moving at 90 degrees or going in, depending on which direction you want to see it going away from you. Coming, either focusing or coming back out like this, either coming at you or away from you. And they're just doing this little pattern. And so light, the actual electromagnetic, and that's not just light, that's everything. That's the whole electromagnetic field is doing that. And the eye are just simply very similar. No, what is another receptor of light? But leaves, right? Leaves receive light and convert it. And look at this pattern up here, one of the most primitive of all leaf patterns. Look at that pattern and look how close it is. In fact, it's identical to the vesica Pisces thing that's going on inside there. Can you see the relationship? It's just simply duplicating the light. It's matching the light pattern. This is how we were able to make a device so sensitive that we could pick something, a light field up at 90,000 miles away, is that we created a horn that was in this geometry, where we had a golden mean rectangle this way and another one facing this way that captured the light. And then it went into a golden mean chamber where the light is focused in 4 of the Fibonacci places. We picked one and put a gold cross up there in the shape and in the proportions of a golden mean ratio. In other words, this is 1, it's 0.618. Stuck it in there and it went through underneath there through a gold crystal which coherentized it, and then into a circuit board that nobody knows anything about. I can't talk about it. It's based on the human spine. And but it was primarily the shape of the horn that was able to actually, the physical shape of the instrument that was able to catch it. Another really good one, though, we decided that would be almost as good, is certain seashells. Be another way to do it using the logarithmic spiral. They're great receptors. They're perfect. And so anyway. Begin to see the nature. Now, this next one, you were looking at Dan Winter's work over here. This is, and I started to talk to you about this before. I'll finally get to answer your question over. One day when Dan Winter was out there, I think it was the second time that we were hanging out together, he said he had just finished all this level of work with the thing with emotions and with shape and all of this kind of thing. And he had gone beyond just coming with the shape of it. He had figured out the sacred geometry pattern that was behind the whole thing. And he wanted to share that with me. In the meantime, I had just been completing this thing with light. And so I explained all this to him, and he goes, yeah, okay. And then he showed me the whole thing about emotions. I go, yeah. And then we were both real quiet for a moment, because this was the pattern that he had for the emotions, which is the same one. It's the same, only he only had just the logarithmic spirals coming out like this. You see? But look what's inside of here. They're just vesica Pisces. It's the same hidden pattern underneath it. And at that moment we realized that the motions are directly connected to light. It's the same pattern. So the emotions and light and eyes and also thoughts which we haven't got into, the memory patterns and everything else are also tied into there. It's all the same thing. It's all come from the same structural patterns. And it's pretty exciting. I mean, Dan's really, I mean, I'm only interested in just getting your brains to kind of go, oh, like this, so this thing will go back and forth, and you'll start to see, so that you'll see the unity of life, and you'll be interested enough into doing the meditations, because I only really want you to do meditation. Dan is really interested in actually he wants to do it. He wants to go all the way and tie the whole thing together on every single level imaginable. And it's great. I have no problem with that at all. I want him to do that. But I'm not really interested in going to that level. I'm only interested in taking someone far enough where they can clearly see that there is only one God, and that they'll proceed further from there. This is the thing with Manfred Klein's work, working totally separately from Dan Winter, and found that emotions have shape that you can see and you can reproduce, and basically came up with the shapes behind them and everything. I don't think Manfred Klein, at least while he had written this thing, had come to the level where Dan Winter had arrived at, because he had found the basic pattern even behind the shapes. But it's just to show you that other people are also thinking along those same kind of lines. Remember this? This thing with this, to be or not to be. Look at this. If you take a piano and you take the white keys and call them female, and you take the black keys and call them male, look what happens on a piano. Wait a minute. This is just laid right across here. Here's C, female, C sharp, male, D, female, D sharp, male, E, female, and there's no E sharp. It goes straight to here, and you have another female. It fits perfectly onto the organic structure of the beats. And then not only that's got 13 notes in it, and you take the white keys out, and you got 8, and you take the black keys out, and you got 5, and you see the Fibonacci series reversing itself. And you begin to see this exact key and connection between the harmonics of music and organic structure. That there's a relationship between organic structure and music. And it's even deeper than that. This is the human spine. Superficially, if you look at the human spine, there are 24 vertebrae. And the balance points, there are 3 primary balance points in the vertebrae: the lower balance, the middle, and the upper balance. And the lower balance is located in between the first 8 shock vertebrae. This is in between the next 8 vertebrae, and this is in the middle of the next 8 vertebrae. All these are octaves. And this one, the middle one, is in between 2 12s or 2 chromatic ones. But that's a real kind of a superficial way. The Rosicrucians really tied it down. They found that if you take the vertebrae and you weigh them, you weigh each vertebrae, that the differences between the weights of each vertebrae correspond exactly between the cycles per second in the harmonics of music. Again, showing you that the harmonics of sound and organic structure are interrelated. Now this indicates that whatever the sacred form is in organic structure must also be the same one in harmonics of music. And when we get to it, you'll see that this is the organic key to organic structure, and it's also the key to the harmonics of music. It's at least in terms of the octave. This is Alex Gray's drawing. You might recognize it for some of you. I just wanted to quickly show you the electromagnetic spectrum. Some people have never really thought about it before, but it is the whole spectrum just about of what we live in. It's the primary field of energy that we exist in. And the only difference between this whole field is simply wavelength. How long or short the wavelength completely changes the nature of the same energy. It's the same stuff. And all of this is the same one based on that one image, that one sacred geometry image based upon the Vesica Pisces, which is light. Just to show you, the longest wavelengths known are the human brain. And they're 10 to the 10th meter long. So they're almost straight lines coming out of the head. They're really, really, really long ones. And they run all the way down to 10 to the 8th, and then around 10 to the 7th meters you get power lines. These big, huge power lines. This is why power lines are so heavy duty, because their wavelength and human brain wavelengths are almost the same. And then you have voice frequencies like what I'm talking to you right now at about 10 to the 6 meters. Going down about 10 to the 5th meters you have audio and telephone and these kinds of things that move on long electric wires. And then you have your radio and television in here, your 10 to the 4th meters, which are low frequency, medium frequency, high frequency, and very high frequency, and ultra high frequency. In there, we're going from 10 to the 4th meters all the way down to 10 meters. Actually, down to 1 meter even. And then you start, those radio and television waves start turning into microwaves, super high frequency and extremely high frequency, sub-millimeter waves, going from 10 to the minus 1 down to 10 to the minus 3. And then the microwaves turns into infrared or heat. And then, your heat is just infrared heat. And then, so first you have the far infrared, and then you have the moving into the near infrared, and then the infrared turns into the color red. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Turns into ultraviolet. And then you have your ultraviolet lights going from A, B, and C, going from 10 to the minus 7s all the way down to 10 to the minus 8 meters, which slowly turns into and this is there is not immediate lines like that. This is a spectrum kind of. It turns into your soft X-rays, which don't really penetrate very well, and then finally gets into hard X-rays, which will go right through things, and which get smaller, 10 to the minus 11th, and then around 10 to the minus 12th, they get into your gamma rays and nuclear rays, all the way down to 10 to the minus 15th, and then from there all the way to 10 to the minus 18th, you have your cosmic rays. And all of these things are just, the only difference is just your wavelength, and they're all based on the same geometrical principles. And it's the same thing, each one is a loop. Whether you're talking about brain waves or microwaves, they're all a loop, and they're all just continuing around, connect one thing, becoming the next thing.
I'm having difficulty with understanding some of the definitions that I'm not getting the definitions.
Okay. How can I help?
Like the levels of consciousness. These are not clearly delineated in relationship to the kinds of things that I already know.
Well, these grids that we're talking about, they're kind of like this. They're energy lines and fields. They extend in the earth and around the earth, and they are the geometries that hold the structure. It's like the grids that create the grid lines that the atoms just automatically move into to form the crystal. There are these grids that move through this one that form that pattern. And then this has this huge field that goes around this. This field probably stretches out to where you are. It's over there. And it's a real field. If you have a sense enough instruments, you can pick it up and see it and feel it. It's a real part of the whole thing. The body, this density is always the little seed, the core that's in the middle of this huge big field. And all I'm talking about is that there's different, with each level of consciousness, there are these grids that are associated with it up to a certain level. And I'm not sure, I believe it's about the fifth dimension when we transcend all of that. I realize that there's universal mind. I understand that. That there is one spirit that moves through everything, but there are levels of consciousness that move out through there. There are, just as there are in your human body, you've got, you can just look down and you can go into an atom, and from an atom up to the molecular structure, and from there into a single cell, and from there into a tissue, and each one of these are consciousness levels, awareness levels, and from there up to a whole bone structure, or to organs, and to one whole body, and then you jump from there to two people, to families, to social structures out farther and farther around. All these different levels of consciousness continue on. They keep on going out in space. They keep going and going and going, and they're all... so when you go up in consciousness, eventually you keep joining with larger and larger bodies that extend out. And even if the thing doesn't have bodies, a lot of them don't have any physical structure whatsoever. But you keep joining with these larger interpretations of the reality. Eventually you come to, I guess, what you would call, some people would call God. Some people would not call that God. It depends. Everybody has a different definition of God, and it's real hard to explain or to agree on that one. But and this is what I see out there. I do know that you eventually get to this one place where you do make that there is nowhere else to go. There is an ultimate. There's an ultimate end, as long as you're still confined within this waveform universe, and where you either leave and go beyond it, or you stay within it. And at which point, what usually happens is you start going back down the other way. And there's actually this cycling motion. There's as many going down as there is going up. And so I don't really, to me, I don't have a problem with this. But I wish I could understand where you do have the problem.
Well, we don't know.
It's trying to distinguish what you're saying by first level of consciousness, second level of consciousness, third level of consciousness. I don't think you've gone beyond the second level of consciousness in relationship to...
Well, see,
This is what I...
okay, the first level is the first time consciousness becomes self-aware. Below that, it's lower dimensional levels, and it's non-human. The first time it becomes self-aware, it has 42 plus 2 chromosomes, and that's the Aboriginals in Australia. They're the only main body.
That's what you mean by the levels.
Yes, we all might look human, but when they look out the eyes, they don't see what you see. Not even close. Not even similar to what you see. They see a whole different world. So different that you can't even talk about it. They got a different viewpoint on a totally different interpretation. If you hold a photograph up to an Aboriginal, you look at a photograph of sunset, and you can look in there and see it. They don't see anything there. All they see is just colors on a page. Their mind can't interpret things like that. They have a whole different way. You know, you look at a tree and you see a green tree there and all that stuff, and you think this Aboriginal standing, you're seeing the same thing. He doesn't see that. He sees something totally different. But you say that's a tree, and he says, yeah, that's a tree, but you're not looking at the same thing. You're not interpreting the tree in the same way. He's a different kind of human being. And when we get those 2 more chromosomes like that, we are really, really different too, because he doesn't see himself as an individual. He doesn't even know what that means. He sees the outside the same as the inside. He only sees unity. That's all he sees. If you go over and kill a tree, you just killed part of him. But we don't see that. We think that we are separate. So we have a different interpretation of the reality. We think we're inside of here and we can get away with anything. But when we go back to Christ consciousness again, it's another unity one. At least in the initial stages there, where there is no inside and outside, but it's far more expanded than the apparitional. The apparitional is pretty much earthbound. The Christ consciousness being is not earthbound. It stretches throughout all time and space. The body of Christ is big. It goes everywhere. And the experience of that cannot be, you can't really, I don't see how you could really put it into words. It's beyond words. It's real different. And the one that goes to the next one above that is another disharmonic consciousness like the one that we're in. If you see all if you see all the geometry laid out there, you'll see that there are 5 squares. There's one, and a triangle, and a square, then another diamond, and another square. And it leads into the final phase where we end up being 55-foot beings with an interpretation of the reality that stretches through all the dimensional levels. And exactly what is beyond that, I don't know. I don't know exactly where that leads to. I can't. It's something I don't quite understand yet. This next little one, you're going to have fun with this. And in the 3 areas that the Atlanteans went, which was Egypt and Peru, Yucatan, and Tibetan area up in there. There was each one of these religious groups that are now seemingly different have a sect to them, a separate little area that is different than everyone else, and that is this little group that is set aside are cross-eyed. They're like this all the time. I don't know if they were born that way, but they go around all day like this all the time. And they're not cross-eyed at random. This is what we're beginning to understand. They were seeing differently. We look at the surface of things, and they were looking at a space in front of you, or in front of whatever they looked at. They looked at a particular place in front of it. If they were going to look at this thing here, they wouldn't look at that. They would look at a place here in front. And they would see something different than what everyone else would see. And they were also artists. And they did a lot of artwork on the walls that we didn't even understand what the heck it was until more or less recently. This artwork would usually be 2 somewhat symmetrical things that would look kind of like they were turned toward each other. And if you were to look at this artwork that was on, if you were to just go look in the artwork, like a tourist, you'd look at it and you go, what the heck is that, It wouldn't make a lot of sense, and you'd just walk away from it and think it was just one of those weird things they did. But if you were trained and you looked at it, the object would come together in this pattern, pop out into space, 3-dimensional, just as real as 3D as this room is, and I mean where you could put your hand behind it, this kind of thing. It would be a 3-dimensional object in space that's still valid even today, in 1993. Got it. And it still be valid. You can still do it. But no one, and we just became aware of this because it actually started, as I understand it, with nurses and doctors who were looking at X-ray photos. And they found this technique of looking at X-ray photos in such a way that they could make the X-ray photo 3-dimensional. It took by looking at it in this funny way, and then they could see into an X-ray photo 3D and see where things were, even though it was a flat photo. And And later this became known as a stereo, and from that they were able to turn it into something called a stereogram. And there's other names for this, but that's kind of the one that stuck. And so there is what I call stereogrammic vision that is possible. It's a different way that human beings can see than they normally see. Holograms. These are holograms. Can you see these things? If I can aim one at one buddy, like she can see it now. And let's see, like little mirrors. You can see it now. Can you see that? You're just blind. I can blind people. Anyway, I guess you can kind of see. These are ones we made up. If you get them in the light, they're really beautiful. It's Our Lady of Guadalupe. But this is a hologram. When you do look at a hologram, it does do one of the things that we're wanting to do, which is it turns both sides of your brain on simultaneously. You can't see a hologram unless you can flip both sides on at the same time. But there's another way. There's another form of three-dimensional art, the stereogram, which is based on a slightly different principle that will also turn both sides of the brain on. And so this is one of the reasons why I want to do this, is that it gives you the experience of having both sides of your brain on, which is something that we don't get too much. When you're listening to music with words, you've got both sides of your brain on. If you hear someone singing, it's got to be with the rhythm of the music and singing. That does it. But this is unique. The stereogram is unique because there's an area of your brain, it's called area 39, I think it is. I believe it's 39. It's behind your right eye. Maybe it's 37. I think it's 39, I think. Anyway, it's one of those. And it's back here. It's a little tiny area back there, which is where your imagination takes place. And so you're going to look at something here in a little bit. It looks like this. This looks like nothing, right? It just looks like a bunch of dots on a page. But it isn't. Because there's actually something out here in space. There's some words out here that you can't see right now, but you could imagine them to be there. When your imagination takes over in a certain way, when you learn how to see stereogrammically, your imagination takes over. This area 39 gets stimulated, and bingo, these words will pop off into space out in front of you, and you'll start seeing stereogrammically. There's another reason. The other thing that happens is the corpus callosum links together somehow, and the pituitary gland gets stimulated, and this chemical that was in you go into theta, is the other thing, very quickly, and this chemical starts being emitted from here very slowly, the same one that was in the king's chamber, and at first it feels, you can't believe the feeling if you haven't felt it before, and then it starts feeling really, really good. If you stay in it a real long time, you don't want to get back out. When I first started experimenting with this, I just didn't want to get out of it. So, and I have to make a little kind of a disclaimer, or no, it's not good. I don't know what it is. So far, I've never had a class where every single person could do it. If you have a difference in your eyes, where one eye is nearsighted and one eye is farsighted, for example, you may not be able to do this. If you have too much stigmatism in one eye and it's not balanced in the other, if there's too much differences between your eyes, you may not be able to do this. What? Yeah, you can do it with glasses and you can do it with contacts. The way you want to learn how to do this is whatever way you read. However you read, if you take your glasses off to read or you put different ones on to read or whatever, be prepared to read for this because you're going to have this up close like you're reading. So there may be some of you in here that won't be able to do this. If you can't do it, it's okay. You didn't flunk. And it's just the way it goes. It's all right. I want to get as many as I can of this if I can. But really, it doesn't mean a thing if you can't get it. There is another reason why I want to get it. There's about 1 out of every 200 or 300 people that this will have a greater meaning to than what I can truly express to you. Because in the priesthood there was only very, very few who were able to understand what this really meant. And they were able to look into a room and see stereogramically. And they could see something different in the room. So even if I only get 1 out of every 200 or 300 or whatever it is, it's worth it. But nevertheless, we'll just do the best we can. So if you don't get it, it's okay. Really, I mean, don't cry or... And also, usually I only get about 60% of the room, something like that. What I've also found is about half to 2/3 of the people who don't get it here, when they go home and they're relaxed, because it has a lot to do with being able to relax. It's like meditation. You can't go into a meditation and say, I'm going to meditate. I mean, there's a certain relaxation you got to do, and a lot of times when people are trying to do this, they start getting more and more intense because they're not doing it, and so they start getting tenser and tenser, and that makes it harder. And so a lot of times when you go home and no one's around and you don't have to prove anything to anybody, you can relax and you'll see it. I'm going to give you one of these. It'll be in the booklet that's handed out, so you can take it home with you. And I also have this one that we're going to hand out to you, and then after that one, I'm going to go through the whole thing. This is one that Mackie made up. It's based on a very sophisticated arrangement of colors relative to the human brain. They're not just at a random on there. There's a very special pattern that's on here. And this one, if you can't do this one, then you might be able to do this one. This one's easier. So we'll try the harder one first. And for those of you who can't do this one, we'll try this one. And then I've got, since then, people have been getting more and more excited about this because of its what it's doing with this area of the brain up here, which is your imagination part of the brain. And by doing this meditation for about 5 or 10 minutes every day, you're stimulating that area, and you will increase. It's like doing exercises, and it really helps in psychic work and all kinds of these kinds of things. This just looks like a bunch of dots, but what you see is not always what you get. And just to be an example of that, you see all these spirals going in here? Everybody see that? No, you don't. There's no spirals there at all, not any. Not a one. What's there is concentric circles. And I can prove it to you by putting this on this one right here, and I will move very slowly. I won't get off of it. I won't leave it. I won't trick you. I'll come right back, and it comes right back to the same place. It's a circle. Come up one more. And it comes right back to the same place. It's a circle. They're all just concentric circles. It's the background that makes you think that it's spirals. Your eyes just do this thing. Same way up here. You see these little bowed out lines? They kind of go like that. Does everybody see that? They're straight as an arrow. I don't know if I can... How can I do this? See how that runs right along the edge of the page? You come over here. Straight as the narrow lines. It's the background that makes it look like that. This is the one we're now going to look at. Preferably with a somewhat of a sharp point.
Is it the same?
Or a pen with a point on it. Okay, does everybody have a pen? Okay. You see these two, you want to arrange the page so it's like this, and you see these two dots right here? Arrange the page so the dots are in that position on the page. Don't look at the little one. If you've got the, let me see this just a second. This big one has a backside. Some of them have a backside. Don't look at that. Look at this big one. It's much easier. Okay? And now, you want to get the page at the distance that you would normally read something. So if you read a book like that, then put it out there. However you read, put it approximately where you read. The other thing is try to get it flat. Don't have it curving or bending or anything like that. It'll make it harder. Not that it's impossible, it's just harder. The second thing is put on whatever glasses you use to read or take them off, whatever you try to do. Okay, now the next thing is you got a pencil, okay, or a pen. Everybody have one? Okay. Take the pointed part up like this, and if this was the, you can look at me here like this now. Here's the thing I've got holding on. You want to put the pen approximately at the phi ratio. You don't want it here. You don't want it down here. Approximately this far away from the page. Okay? And then while you've got it held there, put the point so the point is approximately in the middle between these two dots, only out here. Just the tip of it, so it's lined up approximately even with those two dots. Now, look at the two dots. Look at the page. Don't look at the pencil. And you're going to notice that your eyes, while you're looking at the two dots, you should see two pencils. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Does anybody not see the two pencils? Do you know what I mean by... It's okay, do you not see them? You see them? Okay. You see two pencils, right? Okay, now, take the two pencils, move your pencil while you're still looking at the page. Move it up, down, left, right, in, out, whatever you need to, so the tip of the two pencils, the point of the pencil, lines up exactly on those two dots. The what? Both points of the pencil line up on both of the two dots. Okay? Now once you get the pencil lined up so those two dots are there, hold your pencil carefully. Don't move it away or anything, because that's the focal point. Now, switch your vision from the paper to the tip of the pencil. In other words, look at the tip of the pencil. Now that you've switched to the tip of the pencil, you should see three dots below you. Does everybody see that? No, then if you've got four, you're not focusing properly. You need to start over again. Get the pencils lined up properly. Okay, so has everybody got the three dots? Well, I'm going to go, people that haven't got the three dots, I'm going to go on with the rest of the group and then I'll come back to you and work on it. If you can't get the three dots, you're going to have to start over again. Now, for those of you who have three dots, just relax, and could we put that music on the, Rick? That waveform tape? For those of you who have the three dots, just relax and you're going to see the letter T coming off the tip of your pencil in space. It's going to come like this. Here's your pencil. You're going to see three dots like this, and then in space, right where your pencil is in space, you're going to see the letter T kind of stenciled out. And then if you notice over here, actually I have to look at this real quickly, I don't remember. Oh, okay. It's a H that looks like this. And then you're going to see the word the. Actually, that's not what the T looks like either. It's a capital T. Sorry about that. Gave you the wrong T. You're going to see the word the. And then above it, you're going to see the word in the same kind of print, you're going to see this. Seeing the light. And it's going to be 3D, and it's going to be like a stencil. You're going to see these words come out in space. Now, who sees it so far? Okay, we got a few people here. For those of you who are now seeing this thing, for those of you who are seeing it, stay in it. Just keep staying there and take it like a meditation. And just stay in there and just watch it. And be aware that between your third eye here, you will probably start feeling this tingling sensation. This is, you're now doing something you may not have done for thousands of years. And it's a whole new way of seeing. Your area 39 has been stimulated. It's opening up. Your left and right side of your brains are on once. And if you'll just be real quiet, you'll rapidly go into theta. Your brain will be flipping back and forth into theta. Yeah, you're breathing everything. It's very healthy. You can make a stereogram. It doesn't have to be dots like this. There's lots of ways. The flower of life is a stereogram. You can just take this and cross your eyes, and you'll see a Vesica Pisces in the middle, and it'll be totally three-dimensional, and all the things are in there. That are, as long as you have symmetrical aspects that are on either side. And she asked, "What does it do to your normal vision?" I don't know. I don't know. I'll tell you, if anybody has, if you ever want to talk to someone about vision and things that like that, or what it does to you and stuff like that, there's a man that I recommend. His name is Jacob Liberman. Okay. And he wrote the book called Light and Future Medicine. Light and the Future Medicine. And he's taught a couple times at our school when we had it. And he's got some real good stuff and some really incredible ideas. He used to teach the Olympic team. He could teach, no matter what you do in the Olympics, he could make you about twice as good in about 3 days. And it's Liberman. Liber, L-I-B-E-R-M-A-N. Just for an example, well, he would train you. Remember how you stop your breathing when things happen? He would train you so that you wouldn't stop your breathing. That was the whole key. Was when you started a learning process or anything, you kept your breathing going rhythmically. And if you can do that, you can learn at a much faster rate. And he had this thing, and I watched this with my eyes, and I just couldn't believe it. He put you on a trampoline, a go-around trampoline, where you're jumping on this trampoline, and he puts an easel up here like this, and he goes like this, and he puts these arrows he has these rows and rows of arrows that are different colors, and they're all pointing in different directions at random. This is the first exercise. And he has you, so there'll be a whole bunch of them like this on here. The whole thing will be filled with them. And you're on top of this trampoline looking at this thing. And you start jumping. You have to jump so you completely clear the whole thing. And then you have to start moving your hands like this. So that you got to get your physical body going. So you're jumping up and down, and you're moving your hands to the jump so that every time you come down, your hands are like this. You got a rhythm going. And then he tells you just to to say the direction the arrows are going. So every time you come down, you have to respond. You can't wait. So you go up, right, down, left, up, left, up, right, like that. And then he'll say, and after you go through the whole thing, he says, okay, now say which one is up, but on every other one say the color. So you'd go up, blue, red, green, up, black, up, red, green, like that. You do that one. Then he'd say, okay, now every other one, you keep adding to it. Say, okay, now you keep saying the color, the color, but every third one rotated a quarter turn, and say that one. You go, oh, okay. And you do that, and it just comes out. And you're meanwhile jumping and doing this whole thing. And then he just keeps making it more and more and more and more complex. And so the complexity is you can't believe it. And the person's remembering his breathing and doing his thing, and it just keeps getting more and more complex. He had one where finally he gets you with this poem. It's Mary Had a Little Lamb, something like this. And he has you doing this thing with this poem where you're saying different words, and you're putting words in here, and you're moving the words around, and you're doing all this stuff. And it's so complex, I don't think that anybody can even remember long enough to even write down what all the stuff was. And I watched this one guy, and this guy was going, I'm doing this, I can't believe I'm doing this. And he did this entire thing, this whole complex thing. And he says, okay, you're doing it, you got it. Now turn around and look the other way and repeat it backwards. He says, don't think, just do it. He says, okay. And he did it. He repeated something that took about 5 minutes of super complex stuff. He repeated it backwards. He just walked off the thing going, did I do that? And he had everybody in the room doing this stuff. It was really amazing. And so the same, just one second, he says that like when you're doing any sports or skiing or anything else like this, a lot of it is, you got to get the mind out of the way so the limitations are gone. You know, immediately if someone was to just be thrown up here and say, do that, you'd say, well, I can't. If you gave them the whole thing, you'd say, well, I can't do that. And then you can't do that. But he would just get you so the place where you just could do it, and you can. And so when he would train the Olympic teams, he'd get them the eye movements. He's an ophthalmologist and he has a PhD in light in some way. He works with Malcolm Lillywhite. And the eye movements are real important, your eyes and how you work with them and your breathing. And he's pretty good. He's really good. And he gives workshops on all of this stuff. Yeah. Those Urjifian movements are really, the sacred dances are really extraordinary. Has anybody ever seen this take place? There's a movie called Meetings with Remarkable Men. Has anybody ever seen that movie? Just a few? I really recommend you try to dig it up. It only came out for a little while, and it was too esoteric for most people, and never made very much money or anything like that. But the movie's very, very, very good, and you'll see a side of Sufism that's pretty remarkable. It is on video, and you can get it in video stores, but you'd have to go to a big one, because. Yeah. If you notice, for you who knows, that they never showed the Enneagram on there. They showed the wings of the Enneagram, and they secretly put 3 men sitting at the points to complete the Enneagram. And they never any time did they ever actually show the Enneagram on that screen. But they did at this one dance where but again, it was just 3 people that were actually completing the pattern. Yeah, well, the whole thing is a meditation. and it puts you into a state. This is what I would call an open night meditation. It's where you're not going out, but you're being here to make movement. The next area is that we're going to start looking at, we're going to talk about the chakra systems and a little bit about Tantra, a little bit.